Hello and welcome to That Deacon on YouTube. In about a week or so, we in the United States will be celebrating Thanksgiving. And this episode has something to do with Thanksgiving. Can you figure out what it might be? Well, I'll tell you in just a second. As you can see by the title, I named this episode Show and Tell. And I just told you that it has something to do with Thanksgiving. Do you have any idea? Let me give you one more hint. On any given Sunday, if your church is now reopened, you might attend a Eucharist service. And the Greek word Eucharist actually means thanksgiving. So now do you have any idea what I'm going to show and tell? No? I have brought to show and tell my communion kit. So this communion kit was not given to me when I was ordained. I did not have one for a number of years. I didn't really worry about it because churches have communion kits lying about. But this one has a special little story to it. First off, this is a large model. So a deacon would normally not have this large of a communion kit. But this personal communion kit once belonged to the rector of my sponsoring parish. He and my rector at the church where I served were good friends because she was priested, and that was her first parish where she served when I was going there. And later on, Father Harold retired. He was serving in Central California. And he made a trip to visit us over at St. George's, and he brought some things with him, some books and other things, and this communion kit. Well, Amy, my rector, had one, and so this one was given to me. It has a really neat inscription on the top here. It's from Ephesians, and it says, "Of this gospel I was made a minister according to the gift of God's grace, which was given me by the working of his power." And it used to have Harold's initials on here, but one of the parishioners, I think it was our senior warden at the time, when I received this, had this plaque made with my initials on it. So it was really sweet that this communion kit was now in my possession and with my initials. Now, I've not opened this communion kit since I left the church. I knew where it was, I grabbed it, I threw it in my trunk, I brought it in, and I've not looked. So I'm going to give you a little tour of my communion kit. People seem to be, for some reason, really fascinated with them. And depending upon the person I have brought communion to, if they are very ill, of course, I would never do it. But sometimes people have been in rehab and they're stuck in this rehab place, so they're feeling somewhat well, mostly annoyed. And so they will see this and they'll want a tour, so I will give them that. But I don't know if people have actually seen one of these unless you've had a home communion visit. Now, as I said before, I don't know if everything will be in here. So I am opening this for the first time. So what we have here is a purificator. And this is the fair linen that you would put on top of a chalice. let's see, I have something here that I don't know what it is. This is something that I would not use. This is a blessing that a priest would use if they were going to do a short consecration in the home. So this just happened to be in here from Harold's time. All right, so there's the lid there. And, aha, something's missing. All right. As you can see inside, this has a number of little nooks and crannies. And as I said, there's a whole bunch of things I would never use. Let me take them out one by one and show you. Here is a little candle set. So you can put 2 candles here. I normally never have used the candles, mostly because if you're bringing communion to a person in the hospital, that area is filled with oxygen. So I would hate to light a candle with a lot of high potency oxygen around. That would be devastating, wouldn't it? So, but this kit comes with candles. The other thing is a little cross. So you can set this cross down as you do it. I have and I haven't used this. It just all depends on the room that I have. The next thing that I'll show you is this cute little chalice. And it is gold lined inside. So it's a nice chalice. What I'm missing, by the way, is the corporal. You know, that's a piece of linen that you would set the chalice on. I'm sure you've probably seen that at church. The next thing here is the little cover we would put on the chalice. I normally don't use that. I have, if I think that some stuff may fall into the wine. That's all it's for, to keep flies away and bugs and other things. So we have that. The next thing, I'll bring out an obscure piece. This is a little spoon. What you could do if someone is unable to swallow is you can take a little wine and give it to them. You don't have to give both elements if a person is having trouble swallowing. I have never used this spoon, ever, but it's in there. The next thing, we have the plate. I have used this because I like to keep, I sometimes will put it on top of there and I'll put the wafer in there because that becomes the focal point of what we're doing. So I would not have all of these things here. I might put that there on top of the corporal with the host and the wine once it's filled in there. I do have a little wine cruet that comes in here. This one also came with a water. But again, as a deacon, I wouldn't be blessing elements here in my order. So I just worry about having the wine cruet. And when I get there, I would fill it up, put the bread on there, and then place that in there. And that is it. I don't know what, there's a lock and key for this, but I've never used that. Now, can you tell what I'm missing? I am missing something in here. It goes right here. That is the bread box, the communion box, where I would go and grab reserved sacrament. I always bring one for me, one for the person. If I think there might be family there, I will bring more, but I'm missing that. So that, shame on you, Altar Guild, you didn't put it back. So anyway, that is my communion kit. Now, when I do home communions, let's talk about that for a second, because Eucharist means thanksgiving. When I first started doing home communions, I was a layperson. I was part of a lay Eucharistic visitor team. And they gave us this handy dandy sheet that had all of the parts of a home Eucharist. It would start with a little collect, then a prayer, a healing prayer. Then you would be asked to do a reading. The form, I believe, had room for all of the readings that were used on a typical Sunday. So you'd have to bring a Book of Common Prayer. What I would do is I would bring the actual bulletin with me, because people like to hold something if they can. And in the back of the bulletin is always the news, announcements, and people like to feel connected to the community. So I would sometimes bring the announcements with me also, so people could feel that connection. Then I was supposed to recount the sermon that was given that day, and then you would get into a confession, and then the Lord's Prayer and Eucharist and another closing prayer. Now, I found from the very beginning that very few people expected or needed that complete of a service. You've got to remember, when you're visiting people who are sick, they are really sick. And the last thing they really want is to have this talking head come in and do a mock church service. The one thing that was paramount for me was to be the conduit of two things. One was the community in which we all belong, that parish community. I, as the person bringing home communion, was representing all of the people of that particular parish. The second person that I hoped to enable was the love and healing of Christ. When I would do home communions, this was my own practice, I would make sure that I would park far away from where I had to deliver the home Eucharist. If it's a hospital, I would generally have to walk a long way to get to the appropriate nursing station to check in and whatnot. And I used that time to pray. I would ask for the Holy Spirit to fill me with the love of Christ. I would ask that I would say the right words to soothe and calm the person I was meeting. There was no set prayer. It was just a little time for me to get a spiritual boost before I would walk in the room. I would do the same if I was doing a home communion. If I knew where the house was, I would park a few homes away, so I had that time to gather myself before I knocked on the door. The second thing that I learned was that people did not want the whole rigmarole. So in the early part of doing these visits, I would ask, would you like the full service or abridged? And 80%, 85% of the people wanted abridged. When you do visit someone in a hospital, unless they really, really, really want you there, keep it to 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. When people are lying in bed and they're not feeling well, they don't want to feel like they have to entertain you, or to feel as though you have to be there for them for a long period of time. Generally, people like the visit, but they don't want people to stay for too long because they start to feel uncomfortable. They're grumpy. They're just not up to social gatherings. They don't feel good about themselves. They don't feel good about the way they look. So I try to keep it short and concise, but with a sense that I am there as part of their community, and I'm there for them to realize that the person is loved and cared for and nurtured in all things. And that's more who you are as a person. I am not sure you can really train people that well to do a high-level pastoral visit. I think that's just the essence of some people that are able to do that effectively. Another thing I did that was not on the list was when I would enter a room for the first time. You've got to realize sometimes I would make multiple visits to the same hospital room for an extended stay. The one thing I do the very first time is before I would start the little communion service, I asked God to bless each person that entered that room, because I wanted the patient and the person I'm visiting to know that the people that come to see them and the doctors and the nurses are blessed, are given a boost by God to care for them. And then I would start the service with the typical, the Lord be with you and also with you. And we would take it from there. When I would say a prayer, I relied on written collects out of the prayer book. But as I knew most of the people within the parish that I would visit, I started to just make up my own prayers of healing, my own prayers of comfort. This, of course, would happen after I would have a conversation with whoever was in a hospital room. So I got a sense of where they were spiritually. The one thing that I also did, if the person again was in for an extended stay, is I asked the person who was in the hospital and who was on the mend, I would ask them what they have learned spiritually from that experience. I always found the answers enlightening. They helped me to know how to continue the service for them, because I got a sense of where they were spiritually. And I also learned a number of things about how people feel about illness and how sometimes their spirituality grows when they've been knocked down and have to be lying on a bed mending in whatever way they need to mend. I find that quite enlightening. I hope that you are taking advantage of my Compline online. And I just put up a special Thanksgiving Compline. Next week, of course, is First Advent, so the thrust of Compline will now be 4 weeks of Advent. And also, I hope that all of you have a blessed and calm Thanksgiving. Please try to follow the guidelines that have been put forth by science and health officials. If you can skip a year with having all of the family there, because as loving Christians and people who follow the way of Christ, we don't want to have other people get sick. We care for them too much to do that. So keep it small, keep it calm, and keep it Christ-centered in a joyful Thanksgiving Eucharist. See you next month. Happy Thanksgiving. God bless you and your family. Until next time, bye-bye.